I'm going to lighten the mood a little bit today because we've had a lot of political discussion. There's been a lot of very deep, very meaningful words spoken today. I want to kind of take you back a little bit and talk about something on a slightly different tangent. I'm going to talk about nostalgia, about our food memories and our food past, and how that impacts on us as chefs in our culinary process and the process that we use ourselves in developing our own culinary styles, but also about the possibility of a degradation in food memories over years with the way that society's changing and that the world's changing and that our aspirations are changing, or children's aspirations may be changing. But first of all, I think there's a little film clip we're going to look at first. So I'm sure we all know where that's from. So it's the film Ratatouille. How many of us have had those moments where you taste a mouthful of food and it takes you back somewhere to the past? Because nostalgia, what's nostalgia? Nostalgia is about evoking emotion, and it's taking us to associations past. We're nostalgic about lots of things. It's not only food, but this is food on the edge. So I'm going to be talking more about that whole thing, the nostalgia of food. It's a sentimentality. It's typically associated, I think, with family. For me, family, because this is really very personal to me. With family and with celebration. A few little pictures here of roast dinners and people just sitting around the table and enjoying time together. And the word nostalgia comes from two Greek words. One of them is nostos, which means homecoming, and the other is algos, which means a pain or an ache. So giving us that feeling of joy, I think, but that ache for something that we once enjoyed also. What makes people nostalgic about food? I'm going to tell you what makes me nostalgic about food, because I come from a family, as we already know, I'm from the East End of London. It's not typically a great culinary centre. Most of my friends knew nothing about fresh food. Where I grew up, it's an industrious place. Our families were built generally around shipping yards, and about my grandparents, my great-grandparents all worked on shipping yards, and they ate to sustain themselves rather than really to enjoy themselves. My father broke from that tradition. My dad loved his food. By the way, Amanda spoke earlier on about hooray for mums, because mums are the people that bring that kind of joy and that excitement about food to their children. I want to say hooray to dads too, because my father was the one who inspired me. He's the one that got me cooking in the first place, and he was the person that brought food and joy of food to my family. Both my parents loved their food, and it was especially around the occasion of eating. It was about the food, but it was also about being together and about the social aspect of things too. When we sat down to eat, we ate as a family. No television. It was absolutely banned in our house, unless West Ham were playing on the box. That was the only time. That was the only time that we were allowed to have the TV on while we were eating. because we spoke to each other, we talked to each other. We talked about general things, but we also spoke about the food. Because most of the food that we ate was produced by my dad. He worked for the Inland Revenue. He wasn't a farmer. He wasn't a chef. He just enjoyed food, but enjoyed growing food too. He was an avid gardener. We had a reasonable sized garden. We live in the East End of London. It's not like where I live in West London now, and our gardens are little shoe boxes. Can't really do much about it. I personally don't have a garden at all, which is a great shame. We had a large garden, and he had 2 allotments at the same time. He would spend almost every hour that he could growing. So I grew up with my dad coming home from work, 6 o'clock in the evening, taking off his suit, putting on his overalls and going into the garden. And he would dig, he would sow, and he would look after his garden until the sun went down and he couldn't see anymore. He grew everything. We were more or less self-sufficient with vegetables, certainly throughout the summer months anyway. Obviously in the winter it's a little bit harder, but then he would store vegetables and fruits that he grew during those times as well. He grew during the week, and at the weekends he cooked. And he cooked for us with such love and such passion. We'd see him, you'd come down in the morning and you'd smell the spices that he was grinding. He made curries, he loved his curries. He was bought an Italian cookbook as a wedding present, and he still uses it to this day. And he would make the most amazing minestrones and risottos, all kinds of stuff. But he loved, we ate very simply. And I can take myself back, and I personally can transform myself back to those periods of time. I can sit at that table, smell the smells, taste the food that he cooked. In particular, Sundays. I'm a British boy. Sundays were all about roast dinners. Roast dinners and coming and smelling, being able to smell. He loved lamb, legs of lamb and shoulders of lamb. The fatty roast lamb, he would take the dripping off and roast the potatoes. And then Yorkshire puddings, which go with every roast dinner, not just roast beef. But then he would bring all the vegetables that he grew as well. So he would go out in the garden in the morning and he'd pull up his cabbages and pull up beetroots. One of my favourite memories was of a big pan of boiling beetroots ready for Sunday lunch, and we always put the worst tablecloth on the table because it was an absolute mess by the end of it. So we would just have a big bowl of beetroots that we would peel with our hands and eat, or put vinegar and salt over and eat. And just taking us back to those times was it gives me goosebumps talking about it and thinking about it. But I guess that if we had a little discussion about this, and if everybody talked about what they were nostalgic about, and 100%, every single one of you has probably thought of one thing that they had as a child, and one thing, at least one thing, that makes them feel happy and makes them feel nostalgic about what they ate as a child. A lot of people still get nostalgic about the sweets that they eat, and I know this is probably a little bit controversial because quite a lot of what has been spoken about today is about additives and about sugar and about how you shouldn't feed your children, Jockey, sorry about this, how you shouldn't feed your children additives and so on. But we all get nostalgic about, I don't know, as an Englishman, curly whirlies and sherbet dib-dabs, and we used to get lucky bags with all sorts of little sweet treats in as well. Now, people and cooks from all over the world will have similar stories pertaining to whatever it was that they enjoyed and made them happy as children, and can transport them back to those points and those times. But we also have to ask ourselves, or I think about, what I'm a restaurateur. I have a restaurant. I have a kitchen. I produce food on a daily basis, and it's not for me or my ego that I produce this food. I love to cook, simple as that. But I love to entertain, and I love to give people happy memories of the food that they eat when they're in my restaurant. So what part does that nostalgic pull play on the creativity for the diners and the guests that are in my restaurant? Do we consciously or subconsciously aim to please our guests by default, by our own idea of what will make them happy? Do chefs use their own nostalgic past to create dishes that they think will make their diners happy? After all, what we do is hospitality. Hospitality, to be hospitable, to look after people, to make people enjoy themselves and make people happy. I think for me, that's kind of the crux of what I do, is to put smiles on people's faces. Personally, I base a good number of my dishes on these, on this aspect. One of the most popular dishes that I had on my menu that has only just come off of the menu was a walnut whip. I don't know if any of you know what a walnut whip is. When I was a child, my grandmother, she lived in a very urban place. She lived on the 13th floor of a block of flats overlooking Upton Park. She was from the old school East End. She used to put the sprouts on with the beef. She wasn't a great chef, but she knew how to look after the grandkids. She knew what would make us smile and would make us happy. One of the things that she did, we'd go around there, we had doorstep sandwiches and we had walnut whips. It was one of the favourite things. Walnut whips and strawberry mivies. You remember a strawberry mivvy? So walnut whips it was a whipped fondant encased with dark or milk chocolate and a candied walnut on the top, sitting on the top. Absolutely delicious, completely packed with all the wrong things. But I then wanted to recreate that kind of memory, that sort of past, but in a more fine dining way. So we made a very walnutty walnut fondant. It was a parfait basically with a marshmallow in it. We Paco jetted it up so that it became very, very moussey. Then we refroze it and then we sprayed it with chocolate, a nice candied walnut on the top. And because I'm in Mayfair, a little bit of gold leaf as well, just to give it a bit of bling. But people loved it. And people still ask for it because they come in and they read about it and they say, God, I remember walnut whips when I was a kid. Absolutely loved them. Can I have your walnut whip? Unfortunately, now I took it off of the menu. It was too long on the menu, but it was one of those things that was eternally popular. I also do a baked potato foam, which is probably a little bit kitsch now, where spumas may be a little bit frowned upon these days. But what I do is I take baked potatoes, and again, it's just one of those memories that transports you back to a time when you remember sitting there with a baked potato. I'm sure we all love it, especially we're in Ireland. You must love baked potatoes. But we bake the potatoes far. So we take the potatoes until the flesh starts to impact on, the skin starts to impact on the flesh. And so you get the flavours of the skin actually penetrating right deep inside the potato to give the flesh a very deep flavour. And I think, we were talking about umami. A good baked potato is full of umami, that all-consuming flavour. We then take the potato, we take the skins off, we puree the flesh inside, we make a stock with the skins, and we re-blitz everything together, put it into a siphon, and we pipe it onto the plate. At the moment, I have it on with a quail dish. So we have a roast marinated quail and some barbecue baked beans and baked potato. And again, it's one of those things. It's in a very fine dining style. It looks very pretty on the plate. It's very nice, but to eat just takes you back. It's just baked potato, but in a completely different form. Whenever I go to France, I like to buy food magazines. They do food magazines probably better than anybody else. Maybe the Americans do them very well as well. But there's a couple of magazines that are very chefy. There's one called Thierry's Gastronomy and another one called 3-Star Chefs, I believe, or Michelin. I picked up one of these magazines full of 2, 3, Michelin star chefs, all at the top of their game, all cooking dishes that were quite cutting edge. But in almost every one of them, there's a link to the past. The techniques are different. I guess maybe even the initial concept comes from now, but as I was saying, even subconsciously, we get chefs who look back, who have this intrinsic link with what they already know and with what their fond memories of the past were. This is like, there's a red mullet, beautiful red mullet dish that had pink grapefruit and bouillabaisse dressing. It's a classic bouillabaisse, and a bit like the ratatouille. You eat a red mullet and bouillabaisse dressing, and it kind of takes you back to that whole ratatouille experience. Banana mille-feuilles with this was with rosemary, so it was a little bit different. But there were apple tarts, and there was one where it was a poached egg with waffles. Very smartly done, very beautifully done. But I'm sure all of this was inspired by the past, and all inspired by what these chefs remember fondly as children. Also, French novelist Marcel Proust, I think. Maybe I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Wrote a story called Remembrance from Things Past, or Remembrance of Things Past. And he was taken back. He had a Madeleine. It was all about a Madeleine, and he wrote reams. There were paragraphs and paragraphs about his experience and where this took him. I mean, he's a far more eloquent man than I am, and he put this down beautifully in words. But he wrote about the power of this remembrance, and he wrote about eating Madeleines on a Sunday morning, given to him by his favourite aunt, while she was sat in bed drinking lime flower tea, eating Madeleines, and just before he went to church, he would go and say goodbye to his aunt, and she would dip a Madeleine in the tea, and he would eat it. He didn't eat a Madeleine or drink the tea for many years, and until in adulthood, he was given a Madeleine with a cup of tea, and it took him back, and he talked and spoke just about the power of emotion that food can bring, and the power of emotion of such simple things. A Madeleine is a small sponge cake and a cup of tea, but what it can do to us emotionally. What about the future? You know, we've talked a lot about, you know, I think building a legacy for the children, building a legacy and an environment where children can carry on with the fundamentals of what we hold true and what we hold as being important to us. But then I look around and I think this may be a very cynical view of the world, and I think it probably is, and I'm sure this is not endemic, and I really, really hope not. And I really hope that I'm looking at things from a dark angle and that there's bright sides to this story too. But what are kids being nostalgic about? What is there going to be in 15, 20 years' time for children to have these same emotional ties with their past? We live in a very different age. I lived in a time where we sat down as a family and we sat together and we ate together and we enjoyed together. It was about simple enjoyment, about just the luxury of indulging in things that made you happy. Times have changed, and I think certainly with the digital age, you see too many kids sitting, eating, stuck in front of the television, stuck in front of computers, playing computer games. I have great arguments. I have two children. I have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old. My 12-year-old is completely obsessed with everything gadgety and digital. I have absolutely no idea. And I have arguments with him because I say, turn it off. We'll sit together, we eat together. He does eventually. It takes a lot of cajoling. He does, but what you see is that I'm sure that in other households, and in areas, and it's not just what used to be when I was growing up in the East End. It was Andy was talking about the underprivileged kids in Dagenham. Well, that's where I'm from. Those kids didn't have the opportunity. Their parents didn't have the money. It was a financial restraint on them. It's a little bit different now, and I think that even through the classes and through people who can and have the ability, don't have time anymore. There's not enough time. I can't cook anymore. I'm working, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. People often don't want to put the effort in anymore. And I think it's that effort that creates these memories. Too many children sit in front of the TV, sit in front of their computer games, probably not even aware what's on the plate in front of them, let alone being able to remember it in 10, 15, 20, 30 years' time. I mean, I fondly remember being taken to places. You know, if we lived in East London, but then, you know, my parents would take us into the West End, they'd take us up into town and they'd treat us. And one of the biggest treats for us and for me was going to an Italian restaurant in Soho. It's still there now, not quite as nice now, but called the Amalfi. And the Amalfi was very convivial, very Italian. It was full of Napolitanas, big flouncy red shirts and lots of gusto, serving great Italian food. I mean, we used to eat minestrones, not as good as my dad's, but we used to eat minestrones and cannellonis, and there'd be old men sitting at the bar drinking espressos, smoking cohibas. But that whole environment invoked such great memories for me. Those sort of memories, I don't think children these days are going to get from Nando's or Pizza Hut or McDonald's. You know, are they going to look back? Are they going to taste food in years to come, and it's going to bring that joy and that memory back to them? I'm not so sure. But I think it's our responsibility to, as chefs, and as Andy was saying, Andy touched on a lot of fantastic points there, I think. It's our responsibility as chefs to be able to pass on our passion and pass on our ideas to children, to school children, because, you know, life for a lot of kids is quite sterile these days. You know, I think it's quite predictable. You walk down high streets and they're all the same. Supermarkets taking over everywhere. We had corner shops, we had little shops, we had a proper butcher, a proper fishmonger, a proper greengrocer around the corner to us. We didn't need the greengrocer so much because my dad grew all the vegetables, but we had proper provenance. We had proper shops selling us good food, well-sourced food. Doesn't exist in the same way that it did, and I'm worried that there's going to be a generation of children that lose that soulfulness, that passion in what we do. And I think it's up to us to be able to go into the schools and teach our children about simple joy of remembering these times. As I said, I have two children. I take them into my kitchen. I bring them in on a Saturday morning, and they just help out. When I'll get maybe 15 kilos of cocoa beans, and they stand there potting them for me, which is quite labour intensive. So it's a few quid saved. But they like being involved. They enjoy that, and as they're doing these little jobs, I feed them. And I feed them little bits and pieces, and we'll bring them, I don't know, a snail, a braised snail, or even just a piece of mustard leaf, or something delicious for them to eat. You know, little things as we're making casseroles and stews, and we're doing things like the baked potato foam. I'll squirt a bit of baked potato foam and say, "What's that?" There's all the herbs and the weeds, and we smell them and we taste them, and I'm giving them the opportunity to have these memories, the same sort of memories that I had. Is a little bit different because I came from a home where my dad came home at 6 o'clock. I come home 2 o'clock in the morning. We don't sit together as a family other than on a Sunday, really, anymore. So it's really important for me that they still get that connection, but in a slightly different way. And I think that with that, my worry is that it's not a worry. The kids are coming through. Chefs are always going to be there. There's a bit of a shortage of chefs at the moment, but I think that's never going to change. We're always going to have chefs. We're always going to have restaurants. But will that rooted line back to what the classics that then inspire the modern, is that going to break? Is that going to go? And my worry is that within time, are we going to be looking at dishes that are not like the capellini? The capellini looked incredible, looked amazing. It's beautifully cooked pasta, and you can taste that, you can see that. But it's rooted in this capellini. It's one of those dishes that you look at and you think, yes, I know where that comes from. Are we going to be looking at cuisine simply as an ever-expanding experimental experience without a great deal of foundation? And where does that leave us? Does that leave us kind of, in a culinary sense, floating in thin air? I hope not. We'll all still go out. We'll still enjoy food. But I would like to think that we can inspire our children to be able to do what I do, what a lot of the chefs here do, every chef, I'm sure, to be able to reach into those memory banks and cook from the soul. Thank you.